the seam heads that bleed orange and black. This is Sports Phone KNBR. Sponsored by Industrial Metal Supply on the Sports Leader. Check the live stream on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
The pitch to Wisely. Swing and a fly ball to left field in a couple of steps. Teoscar Hernandez. And the Dodgers beat the Giants. I guess it was fitting that it was Teoscar Hernandez who recorded the final out of the game, as he knocked in all of the Dodger runs with the bat. And the Dodgers beat the Giants 3-2.
Yeah, Dodgers win 3-2 over the Giants. Did they beat the Giants? Did the Giants beat themselves? Did Teoscar Hernandez beat the Giants? All things seemingly equally true here on this Monday night as we welcome you in to Sports Phone KNBR, the post-Giants game edition, as the Giants do in fact fall once again down at Dodger Stadium after dropping 3 consecutive contests back in April. They lose the first game of this 4-game set coming up here over the next few days. 808 KNBR, it is John Dickinson with you here on a Monday night, revved up and ready to go here, talking some Giants before heading off to training camp tomorrow. That's right, 49ers training camp, believe it or not. Can it get here soon enough? When you look at where the Giants currently are, it is upon us. The NFL season be out at training camp here for the next few weeks. And on Sports Phone KNBR here, post-Giants game edition for the next couple of nights after tonight as well. So to join the conversation, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Appreciate everybody, as always, watching on YouTube and Twitch and the KNBR Twitter stream as well. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open, and what a frustrating night for the San Francisco Giants. Wow. I mean, to lose the game in the fashion by which they did, with all of the 90-foot mistakes and the miscommunication in the outfield there in the bottom of the 8th inning, as Matos and Ramos miscommunicate a ball that should have been caught into a double off the warning track. You got Eric Miller trying to get his way out of the jam. He's striking out Ohtani. Tyler Fitzgerald making a diving stop, flipping the ball glove flip to Wisely to get Will Smith at second base for the second out. Randy Rodriguez comes in, and Teoscar Hernandez. As much as tonight was about the Giants' mistakes, whether it be the outfield mistake that I just mentioned, whether it was the wild pitch following a 2-out walk to Freddie Freeman, which set up Teoscar Hernandez single for the Dodgers' second run of the game, or Teoscar Hernandez himself, who drove in all 3 runs for the Dodgers. It was just really a frustrating night that shows the tale of this poor start now, officially dropping 3 of the first 4 post All-Star break, when the Giants seemingly were hell-bent on trying to get onto some kind of a run. The positives from this one: some real good Lamont Wade Jr. at bats throughout the course of the game, some good Patrick Bailey at bats throughout the course of the game, and Blake Snell, really good for a 3rd consecutive start. But the problem is, going back a couple of weeks to when Blake Snell started pitching well in that series against the Toronto Blue Jays, the Giants have won his starts, didn't win his start tonight, but still dropping 2 out of 3 to the Jays. They're able to eke out a series win against the Twins, but they give that back with a series loss to the Rockies coming out of the gate. Now you're facing the Dodgers, and on paper, you're thinking that this has the potential, with River Ryan making his major league debut against the Giants and against Blake Snell, as dominant as he's been now in 3 starts. You're thinking this is the shot to get one at Dodger Stadium, get back to 2-2 post All-Star break portion of the schedule, and have a shot with the Dodgers. Really, they're pitching in shambles, and still no Mookie Betts. And so you got a shot to maybe win a couple of games against the Dodgers down at Dodger Stadium. and try to right the ship and go back into the weekend at Oracle Park against the Rockies with the 4-game set and the doubleheader and all of that. But doesn't work out. And it's, as it has been too many different times for the Giants during this season, it's just been bad baseball. It's been 90 feet here, miscommunication in the outfield there, walk here, inability to hit with runners in scoring position there. And it writes the story as to why the Giants are in the position that they are in right now. And I think now is a good time for a little bit of a reality check. And the reality is, as much as the chatter is buy or sell, and look, Farhan Zaidi had said before the break that the performance of the Giants leading up to the trade deadline, which is now a week from tomorrow, is going to ultimately determine it. And yes, the Giants still have the 4 home games against the Rockies coming up, in addition to the 3 games against the Dodgers, to tell a story as to, can they make a push back toward 500 and make the thing look like it's a little bit more worth fighting for over the last 2 months of the season. But the reality check for the Giants is they're 1-3 since the All-Star break. We can talk about games against the Rockies. And yes, I know games against the Rockies in San Francisco historically are different and go much better for the Giants than maybe games at Coors Field, although the Giants had played well at Coors Field the last few years. But they're 1-3 since the break. They're 48-53 now overall, 5 games under the 500 mark. They're 4 games back of the third wild card. 4 games back right now of that third and final wild card. And not only are they 4 games back, but Cincinnati, Chicago, Arizona, San Diego, and Pittsburgh are all in front of them. And none of those teams that I just mentioned are actually the third and final wild card team. So you've got 5 teams. As I roll through it, 5 teams in front of the Giants right now that aren't even holding that last spot. You've got the Mets with the last spot at 51 and 48, and 3 games over the 500 mark. The Cardinals are a half game ahead of them, 4 games over. But the Giants right now at 5 under are 1 loss away from their low water mark of the entire season. And a couple of different times this year that the Giants have met that mark. And you go back to a couple of months ago in the middle of May when the Giants were facing the Dodgers at Oracle Park. They dropped the first 2 games of a series May 14th. And the Giants were 6 under at that point. They clawed their way back and got hot. And a couple of weeks later, had gone from 6 under to 2 over at the end of May. But they have not been 500 since then. They have not been 500 in June at any point. They have not been 500 in July. Now, as we reach the 22nd, and so they get close, and then they get closer to their low water mark than their high water mark. And that's just the reality of the situation right now for the Giants. They are closer to their low water mark than they are to the best version of themselves, which to this point has been 2 games over 500 going back to the end of May. So when you start looking at, the individual positives from a game like tonight versus the individual negatives and what does it mean, and are they in the race, and there's so many teams, and you can be pretty weak and still get that last spot. The Giants have got to get it going here in the next week, or Farhan Zaidi's going to be tapping out on some veterans and on potentially some payroll, and it's going to be more of the young players. And I think it's going to turn from the goal of, hey, this team was built to get into the postseason to, I'll see some young guys and maybe they make a run and surprise us. That's really what it's becoming at this particular point in time. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Again, the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open as well. Feel free to jump in and join the conversation tonight. Just too much bad baseball all season long, and I feel like, lately, really since the Giants came home off of that Atlanta-Cleveland trip, and the period of time bridging the prior to the All-Star break and now these first 4 games coming out, let's say the last 5-6 games before and now the first 4 games coming out, there's been a lot more sloppy baseball. There's been a lot more of the miscommunications on defense and the poorer approach with runners in scoring position. And for a stretch there of a couple of weeks, the losses looked better. It was a point that I'd made on a number of different shows here on KNBR, filling in all over the board from the morning show to Papa and Lund, and even in the afternoon a little bit. It just the fact that the most positive thing you could say was really that the Giants' losses had started to look better. The Giants' losses these last 4 games here out of the break and 6 games before the break have reverted back to looking like this is a bad baseball team, to put it bluntly. So you look at tonight, Blake Snell, really good. Again, that's 3 excellent starts for Blake Snell. And but at the same time, the Giants they're not making it stand up. They had won his last 2 starts, but they damn near blew both of them and then came back and won them. He didn't get the win in either. And tonight he pitches well enough to get a win, and the Giants wind up losing the game. And then they're not winning Logan Webb games. They're not winning the other games in between. So we can talk about Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb, and Ray is going to pitch at Dodger Stadium on Wednesday night in his Giants debut, and Cobb maybe is about a week away or so, and Hayden Birdsong has seemingly been a revelation. Like, he's been really good, and none of it has added up to really, truly feeling like this team is good enough to do anything. So it's like, even when you take the positive approach, it's like, this is good, that's good, like that, and then it does not compute. It does not add up to quality winning baseball. And look, I think we know where this thing is headed. If this continues, a couple of more losses, maybe 2 of the next 3 to the Dodgers, and barring, going 6-0 against the Rockies and the A's, which I guess you can't completely put off the table, but where this thing is headed right now is, the Giants being 6 under with that 4-game set against the Rockies coming up, and then the 2 against the A's before they head back out on the road. And wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't it be peak 2024 San Francisco Giants to get to 6 under again and then actually win 5-6 in a row to get back to 500? I mean, it's just been a yo-yo of mediocrity. But I think when you look at it as far as the eye test goes, and we keep talking about projecting ahead and what looks good and what's going to get better and why this team should be better in the second half, and for every logical reason that everybody can come up with as to why this team is going to be good and get on a run, when they actually go out and play the games, it doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen because the reality is that I think we've seen, at least this current version, what they are. And it's a 2 to 6 under 500 kind of a team that isn't going to look like they're too far out of the wild card race when it's all said and done, because the team that gets the final wild card is probably only going to be 6 over, maybe 4 over, with the way things look right now. So they might end up 4 or 5 games back, but I think we're also going to look at the eye test if it continues down this line and be like, yeah, this team was never really good enough. 808 KNBR to join the conversation. That's where Roy in San Leandro pops in here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Roy.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right tonight, my man. How you been?
Not too bad. Hey, look, thanks for taking my call. Hey, look, I just wanted to say, it's too late for the Giants to go ahead on and thinking that because number one, they didn't have really what you might say a good spring training. Snell came in late, and they have growing pains with these rookies and all like that. They didn't really have a good spring training. Okay, what I'm saying is that the Giants need to go ahead on and sell. You know, the reason, and I'm not saying that with impunity. I'm just saying it because I'm mad because the Giants are not performing. I'm saying this is the time they got players that they can get back. They can get prospects back from other clubs, not mediocre. I'm talking about good players because, okay, their minor league systems are not turning out the way like teams like the Cardinals, Tigers. If you look at these other teams, you'll see that, look at the Tigers. They got those guys like McKinstry and all of them. They coming through. Look at the Cardinals. They got good position players. And, you know, what I don't understand is, like, I talked to a guy on the A's, you know, A's scout about a year ago, and he told me, he said that he couldn't understand some of the players the Giants were looking for. And he said, I'm not there, so I can't really go into it. But he doubted why the Giants were passing up players that they could be using, you know, instead of, I'm talking about in the draft and stuff. But,
sure,
you know, the Giants just need to go ahead on and Farad Zadi and just tell the fans, look, we're going to go ahead on, give us at least a year and a half. We're going to go ahead on, rebuild, you know, and do this thing right, you know. But I'm just saying, you know, it's the same thing. It's been the same thing for the last couple of years. They need to hire some more scouts too, you know, to go out and get some good, fine ball players. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for taking my phone call.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Roy, for chiming in. A real good phone call. I've been taking notes. A couple of things to comment on. 808 KNBR is the number to join the conversation. It's John Dickinson here. Sports Phone KNBR post-Giants game edition. Giants lose to the Dodgers tonight 3-2. Frustrating game. Teoscar Hernandez drives in all three. Miscommunication in the outfield, bottom of the eighth inning between Luis Matos and Elliot Ramos leads to a double on a ball that should have been caught. You got 2 out walks and wild pitches setting up RBI singles. Just sloppy baseball. Early in the game, you had Jorge Soler out going to third, making the first out of the game. He tried to make a hustle play with good intentions on a bobble by the Dodgers outfielder. He ends up out trying to go on a single by Wade from first to third. And it just, you know, too many sloppy 90-foot mistakes. As far as Roy's call, I had somebody tell me, and look, I'm going to be straight here because I liked and thought that the moves that were made by Farhan Zaidi in spring training, Chapman, Snell, you know, I thought those moves were necessary. They needed to make those moves. But when you sign guys late and guys come in late, and I had somebody tell me, JD, it feels like the Giants built their team in the transfer portal, right? Like it was just they had the team, there were guys they wanted to get, they couldn't get them, they weren't sure if the price was going to come to a point where they could make it happen, and then eventually it was like, the market dictated that we can get this guy, bring everybody in. It never really has felt cohesive. I agree with that. That's the main point I wanted to make as far as that. I mean, look, right now, maybe we're having a different conversation Sunday, but right now, I mean, it's trending towards selling. And, you know, some of the growing pains with some of the younger players, yeah, that's been prevalent. But at the same time, the younger players who've gotten an opportunity have also in large part been the Giants' most productive players. So even that is a conundrum, right? But you have to live with it because those guys, and you know, particular Elliot Ramos playing center field, he's been their best hitter and an all-star. So it's when you're going to play those guys and they're going to be among your best players, you are still going to have to live with some of the growing pains and the miscommunications and the things like that, even if it is bad baseball. I cannot imagine a scenario where the Giants go into another rebuild, or they decide they're going to go into a rebuild now is probably a better way of saying it, because they have not been in a rebuild at any point. Really, the only season that I can ever remember the Giants rebuilding, I mean, it was literally one season. It was literally the 2008 season after they let Barry Bonds go at the end of the 2007 season. It was Bruce Bochy's second year. And that is the only year that I can remember. And I remember pretty clearly watching the Giants since I was a kid in 1989. And obviously they went to the World Series. There was no rebuild at any point since I've been watching the Giants. And other than the 1 year where that was the 1 year in 2008 where they said, we're going to play the young guys, see what we've got. And, by the end of that year, Brian Wilson was a pretty good closer, and Sergio Romo had come up, and Pablo Sandoval came up at the end of that year. Obviously, Lincecum and Kane were there. Madison Bumgarner, not quite there yet. Buster Posey was going to be on his way pretty soon. And they really only did it for 1 year because by 2009 they were a good team again, winning in the mid to upper 80s. And then in 2010 we all know what happened when everything got pieced together and the beginnings of the young core and 12 and 14 and all of that. But I can't see them. I can see them selling, but there's no way you can go into a rebuild now after refusing to do it 2018, 2019, 2020, 22. And again, I get the reasons why you wouldn't go into but you're not doing that now. And if you are doing it, Farhan Zaidi's not going to be the guy who's leading it. If that's going to be the way that ultimately plays out. Let's continue on the phone lines with Gary next in San Ramon on the Sports Leader. Big in San Ramon tonight, Gary. What's on your mind?
Hey, JD. Good to talk to you. Just a couple of things, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Melvin's losing me on this Soler thing with him leading off. I just don't get it. He's not giving competitive at-bats. You've got a couple other guys that would be obvious candidates for that, and it's just more of the same with the starting pitching that they haven't pushed all year. He wonders why his bullpen is a little shaky right now. Well, they lead the league in innings pitched, and the starters with not so much. And we're 25th in ERA, and so the team that needs to be pitching and playing defense is just not doing it and hasn't been doing it. And right now, what's the pressing need? You need a bat. So you may have to unload some assets to get a bat, but I don't think Farhan will do it.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's hard to imagine that the Giants are going to look to add. If anything, it's a stand pat, or if anything, it's look to move somebody, like a Conforto. I think the big one, and this has been, a few people have mentioned this over the last few days, like would they look to move Duvall? I know that's been a name in the last couple of weeks that's popped up as a younger player that wants an extension, and they haven't been able to do an extension with him, and he's also struggled at times this year. And so, would he be somebody that maybe they would look to try and move? I think it's going to be interesting, though. The next week definitely tells the story. I don't feel like the Giants have a bunch of veterans that teams really would want, unless you're going to start talking about, Lamont Wade's and guys like that. And Wade had a great night tonight. He's a great at bat. Like Lamont Wade hitting, second for somebody or hitting seventh for somebody. Think about Lamont Wade hitting seventh on a team that's got a bunch of boppers, and or hitting near the top of the order on a team that's got a legitimate. He could be the type of guy that maybe puts a team over the top and can give you some good at bats in a playoff series in a lineup where he doesn't necessarily have to be a carrier. But yeah, and then the flip side of it is if you're going to sell and you're going to move veteran players, then it becomes a situation where you have to have younger players that are ready to come up and be everyday players, and I'm not sure the Giants have that right now organizationally. Now you can say, all right, Conforto is gone, and you let Luis Matos play, and I think Luis Matos, unfortunately, has been now in this scenario where he's become the right-handed platoon guy, assuming the Austin Slater role, since Austin Slater was traded a couple of weeks ago. But I look at Luis Matos, and I aside from the week where he was the player of the week, is he truly an everyday player? Although I guess maybe you give him a couple of months run at being the guy if you determine that you want to sell off some veterans and maybe try and get some players at other positions or some minor leaguers that you want to take a shot on, and you just let it rip essentially with Matos, because what you have hasn't been working either. And the one thing that has happened for the Giants these last couple of years is whenever they've been backed into a corner, never truly by plan, but whenever they've been backed in a corner and some of the young guys have been forced to come up and play, they've played well. But even that, it's never totally felt cohesive between the veteran guys that they've got, and it seems that the young guys only tend to perform when the veteran guys are out, and then when you blend them together, it just, or you start overexposing them, then they don't play as well, top to bottom, and so it just has not felt cohesive at any point here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Matos and Conforto. Key moment in the game, and I want to give a hat tip to our buddy Marty Lurie, who sent me the text, and I had this in my notes, but we were getting off in a number of different directions. Yeah, appreciate that, Marty. Thank you. And the great Raf Corral in our San Francisco studios. Appreciate you, Raf, as well. But, yeah, you get to the sixth inning, and I agree, and Marty had mentioned this to me via text. Lamont Wade Jr. leadoff single, Ramos bounces into a force out, then Bailey hits one to the wall, but it's a single. First and third with one out. The Dodgers make the pitching change. The Dodgers go to Vesia, their guy. They get Ryan out of the game. They go to Vesia, who's a big-time left-handed reliever, and Bob Melvin played the right-left, and he hit Matos for Conforto. And Matos struck out in that situation, and then Vesia blew Chapman away as well to end the inning. And the Giants at that point, I think it was 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position, on a night where, in addition to some of the sloppy play, the inability to hit with runners in scoring position was a big part of the story. I mean, you look at it, the Dodgers had they were a 2 for 6, and it was 2 Teoscar Hernandez singles that plated a couple of runs, and then the Teoscar Hernandez homer. And you look at it, and it's right there. And Teoscar Hernandez ends up being the guy that beats you. Actually, I guess one was a double. And so, yeah, that winds up being the reason you lose. And the Giants are 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. But I do think that was odd to play. And look, I know Vesia is as good as it gets as a lefty reliever, and he's having an incredible season. But to have the young guy hit, even being a right-handed bat, for the veteran left-handed bat in Conforto, and being a guy you paid and a guy you want in those situations, I thought it was interesting. And Matos ends up part of that miscommunication that we talked about in the eighth inning with Ramos in the outfield, and it leads to what proves to be the go-ahead run. But yeah, that was one that had me scratching my head, because to me, if it's a younger player, or if it's somebody maybe like Yaz, you make the move and you pinch hit. But to have that be Matos for Conforto, who was one of your guys, maybe he's not going to be one of your guys for longer. And it's not exactly like Conforto's been tearing it up. So, maybe you just want to go with the matchup in that particular situation. But it was strange to me. And our guy Marty Lurie, the veteran should hit. The veteran should hit in that situation against the tough lefty. I'm inclined to agree. I'm inclined to agree. I marked it down in the moment and a lot of other things happened in the game, but that was unusual to have Conforto be a guy who gets pinch hit for Matos in that particular situation. Let's go to Pat in San Francisco next here on the Sports Leader. Got a couple of lines open, 808 KNBR. Hey, Pat.
JD, what's up, man?
What's going on, Pat? Good to hear from you.
Oh, man. It's a weird spot the Giants are in, I mean, first of all, I never call in, so, hey, first-time caller, what do you know? I don't know, man. The Giants are in a weird spot. It's tough to see because if you think about all the Bay Area, like, championship teams with the Niners and the Warriors and the Giants, the years after have not been easy, and it's kind of interesting to see how each of those teams after those years sort of developed after, right? And I don't know, the Giants are in a weird spot, and just the way I've seen how the Niners did it, like I wasn't alive back then, but I know everything about it and how everybody left, and Eddie wanted to get rid of guys a year earlier than, maybe they were not done yet, but I don't know. It's an interesting spot, and I don't know if I'm worried or it's just with the Warriors and Giants right now in these situations. Like they're both kind of similar. Where I think Clay going to Dallas was kind of like if Crawford or someone else went to another team, and I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see the comparisons with the three championship because not a lot of cities have had that much winning. So. I think it's a tough spot for the Giants right now, and I'm really pulling for them, but the veterans are killing them, and it's hard to watch. The young guys are playing their butts off, and anyways, yeah. What were you going to say?
No, it's just, I mean, you're right. I mean, when the young guys you can expect to be up and down, the veterans is you start to look at the autopsy of this thing, and maybe it's a little bit too early for that still because there's a third of the season to come. But when you really look at it, it's the pitching has not been together. It hasn't gotten together quickly enough, which has been one of the issues. The young players, when they've had opportunities, have for the most part performed, but you have to deal with mistakes. You've got a guy like Wisely who came up and hit, but then he's really playing out of position. Fitzgerald's 4 home runs in the last 4 games. That's been great. So he's taken advantage of his opportunity. But with all of those players, Ramos and Matos, it's been an adventure in the outfield, for both of those guys as well. And they nearly collide tonight, and the miscommunication and the ball drops, and it's been tough. But I think when you look at the whole thing, the veteran hitting is something that it goes down as maybe a bigger failure than any of these other areas of the team that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, all the veterans are hitting like 230. I mean, it's just a weird lineup at times. There's not a lot of energy, like it's just kind of like run out of the field, run back to the dugout. You don't see a lot of excitement, and I mean, that's why I want them to sell. I mean, I never want them to sell, but I think they're in that situation right now where it's like you got to sell off some of these guys and just see what you can get, because this mediocrity is more frustrating than anything. Like, I mean, I'd rather see young, exciting players, and we got a few of them, and then all these veterans, it's just frustrating to see. I just hate where the Giants are at, and I love them. I watch every game. I listen to the post-game shows, and I'm kind of venting a little bit. So
yeah, no, it's that kind of night. It really is. I mean, it's that kind of night, and it's the Dodgers again, right? Teoscar Hernandez was somebody that could have been had, in the offseason. Like Teoscar, if the Dodgers, for all their hitting, they go out and they make a trade to get a guy that's basically had 20 home runs every year the last 5 or 6 years, except for the COVID year when he would have had 20. He had 16, I think, in 60 games that year. So, like, and he's a right-handed hitting outfielder. I mean, that's not a superstar player, but he's a guy that's got some pop. He's been a clutch hitter throughout the course of his career, and he just won the freaking home run derby. And it's like, where are the moves to try and, make the smaller deal to bring in the guys that maybe aren't superstars, but also aren't and I mean this with the most respect, that aren't the scrap heap guys, that aren't the guys that are completely unaccounted for in other organizations. Lamont Wade Jr. is a really good player, but there's a level of player between, say, Lamont Wade Jr. and Aaron Judge, and Teoscar Hernandez is that level of player, and the Giants, I feel like, don't have any players that are in that tier in terms of youngish veterans that really move the needle.
No.
Thanks, Pat.
One more thing, I just want to say,
go for it.
I appreciate you taking my call, and I hope things turn around. I was looking at the 2012 National League All-Star team, and it was Pablo, Matt Cain started, Buster behind the plate, Melky Cabrera, quote unquote. That was such a cool thing to see, and just where we're at now, it's, as a fan, and you're really taking it on the chin sometimes. So, hopefully we're better than in the future, and I appreciate you taking my call.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. Appreciate it. I mean, look, you'll always have the memories, and we've talked about this a lot with Warrior fans, and doing the Dubs OT shows here on KNBR and covering that team for as long as I have. And I mean, if you're look, anybody listening right now, if you're a Warriors fan, I mean, you never would have dreamed that the Warriors, from what they were for decades, would become what they have been for the last decade. Like, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, there are Giants fans that never would have thought that they would have ever seen their team win a World Series ever, let alone 3 and 5 years. So you're always going to have those memories. And look, the 49ers are kind of on the other end of the spectrum, right? Like, all the old heads, those guys are the guys that have seen the Super Bowls and the dynasty, and now this team hasn't quite been able to get over the hump with the 49ers, but it's kind of flipped, right? You've got the young guys that are you've got young guys who are trying to come to grips with their fandom off of seeing dominance from the Warriors and the Giants, but then you've got that same age range and generation that's also never seen the 49ers win a Super Bowl, where their father or their older cousin maybe has. So it's fascinating when you look at it from that standpoint. Glenn in Visalia is next here tonight on the Sports Leader. Hey, Glenn.
Hey, JD, first of all, you are doing not a great job, but a fantastic job. But you're making me laugh, JD.
Okay.
Saying you be an idiot. There's 29 idiots out there, JD. There'll be an idiot if they take anyone from the Giants but Snell. Why are you laughing? You're agreeing, right?
Well, I'm laughing because I don't know that Snell's the only one, but there aren't a lot. Like, there aren't, when they say sell, I will fully admit, when I hear sell, I really do, the first word that comes into my mind is who. Or because I don't think there is a long list, and that's why I bring up a guy like Wade even, or a guy like Duvall even, somebody that would want to pay Snell for next year, because he's probably picking up that option. So you'd get him for this year, and he'd either opt out if he pitches well enough, or he'd opt in if he doesn't. So no, to me it's more, who really is going to, Conforto, I think, can give, but you're not getting a lot for Conforto. Conforto can help somebody, I think, in a platoon situation on a really good team where he's batting 7th or 8th, and it's, a stretch run, and he's going to get pinch hit for because they have a righty. But you're not getting a big-time prospect or anything for him or Yaz or, anybody else that's a veteran.
But, JD, what do you think of Bailey? Do you think Bailey is an average catcher, good catcher, below average catcher?
I think he's average to above average. I mean, projects to be as he continues his career. I know he's had a little bit of up and down. I think defense tonight was amazing. I mean, one of the plays of the night tonight was in the bottom of the first inning when he makes a great throw and he had the 1.8 second time on the transfer and the throw and everything. I mean, that was just beautiful. So, no, I think Bailey's a keeper for now. I'm not sure that's where you're going, Glenn, but to me, Bailey's a keeper for now. Well, I'm not doing anything with Patrick Bailey. Catchers are tough to come by.
Well, JD, I'm saying that everyone goes. Everyone goes because the Giants' defense is not going to show up, JD. Because why pay you hard-earned money to watch the team who don't give a hoot? Who don't give a hoot? I'm not saying. To me, they're just going through the motions.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're going through the motions. I would disagree with that. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it, Glenn. I just think they have proven to not be good enough. I just think they've proven to not be good enough. It just and depending upon what happens over the next week, they may really look to tear this thing down as much as they can and give opportunities to young players moving forward here over the last 2 months of the season. Because why not? Because when you look up at the standings right now, they're in a position where they're 4 games back of that wild card, and there's 5 teams in between them. So but regardless, this team, as it was put together, has not worked. It hasn't worked. And if the pitching, Cobb and Ray, weren't back quickly enough to have a formidable rotation and Snell didn't get his act together until July, then to me, whoever put the team together gets held accountable for all of that. Because the goal was to get one of those wild card spots. So they're up against it right now. And we'll see what happens tomorrow with Jordan Hicks, and then Robbie Ray's going to make a start, and Logan Webb, and they'll go back through the rotation again, and we'll see if they can make some hay and get a couple of wins against the Dodgers, and then really, dominate at home against the Rockies. I mean, I feel like that's the last stand. The last stand, and it coincides perfectly with the trade deadline, and obviously the trade deadline will be before the Giants play the A's, but it really is, can you win 5 of the next 6? 5 of the next 7. It really is. 6 of the next 7. I think that's the kind of thing that it's going to take. Can you win 2 of the next 3 with Jordan Hicks, Robbie Ray, and Logan Webb, and then sweep 4 against the Rockies at Oracle Park? And then maybe you got a little action. I mean, that would put you back to 500. You'd feel like you're in it. And look, if you could get back to 500 that quickly, then you're only a game and a half out. And then you're vaulting above some of that glut of mediocrity. And then at that point, maybe you don't look to add, but you don't look to completely tear the thing down either. All right, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and pause here. We'll come back. We'll get to some texts. We'll get to the YouTube chat a little bit as the Giants lose to the Dodgers. 3-2 the final. It is KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Here's Tyler Fitzgerald against Yarborough. He blasts one to deep left field. Going back on the ball. Vargas, it is gone! 4 straight games with a home run for Fitzgerald. And the Giants have tied the game on that one swing. He's done it again.
He's playing great. A lot of confidence. Made a great play defensively as well. He's hit some homers. He draws a walk in the 9th. He's playing with a lot more confidence and a lot calmer. I think that he knows he's going to be here and get a little bit more playing time for sure.
The nighttime is the right time for Sports Phone KNBR. Let's go on the Sports Leader. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, John Dickinson back with you. Sports Phone KNBR here on the Sports Leader. Bob Melvin talking about Tyler Fitzgerald, who has been really freaking good since the All-Star break and getting an opportunity to play a lot more regularly since the Giants DFA'd Nick Ahmed going back a couple of weeks ago. 4 straight games with a home run for Tyler Fitzgerald, the first Giant to homer in 4 straight games since Brandon Belt did it twice in the 2018 season. He did it in April and May, and you've got Tyler Fitzgerald now, 4 of his 5 home runs on the season, all coming here in the 4 days since the post-All-Star break portion of the schedule has started. And also a couple other notes I saw. First Giants shortstop to do 4 home runs or 1 home run in 4 straight games. 4 home runs over 4 straight games, but since Rich Aurelia. So that's good company. And the youngest Giant to hit a home run in 4 straight games since Will Clark. So you got to go all the way back to the late 80s for some of the notes on Tyler Fitzgerald. And, yeah, Bob Melvin talking about the great defensive play that he made, the diving stop and the glove flip to Brett Wisely to get Will Smith at second. That was in the midst of a lot of trouble that bottom of the 8th inning with Eric Miller in the game and the miscommunication on the fly ball between Luis Matos and Elliot Ramos that set up trouble and proved to be the difference in the game. Fitzgerald made the diving stop. Looked like maybe they could turn 2 on that. Didn't happen. Randy Rodriguez came in and Teoscar Hernandez singled in the go-ahead run there as the Dodgers wind up winning this one by the final of 3-2. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go to Daniel next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, what's going on, JD?
Doing all right, man. Another tough one for the Giants, trying to make sense of it all and just figuring out what they're going to do, because I think if you've been watching, the tells are there that this team just doesn't have it this season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're speaking the truth, and honestly, like, it's felt like this since the first game of the season. Like, they went on that run in Pittsburgh and New York, but it's like you just think of whenever this team has really needed to get like a must-win game, like, there's really no such thing as a must-win here in July, but it's like, just these gotta-have-it games that can give some sort of momentum to the group and everything. It's just they haven't been able to do it all season. And yeah, it's like they've put themselves in this situation, and I at this point, just the front office needs to just realize that this team ain't going nowhere, and and to be honest, I would say get rid of Snell. His value is probably not going to get any higher for the rest of the season, and hopefully, you never know, maybe you can get something. A team will get desperate. Maybe Baltimore can call and see what you can get for Snell. But yeah, it's just been very frustrating, and it's just been bad baseball all year.
Thanks, Daniel. No, I appreciate it. And look, I don't know that they'd look to move Snell either. I mean, you get the guy, but again, if he pitches well enough, he could opt out. And we'll see. But obviously, he's got better than $30 million coming to him next year. And look, 3 good starts are not enough to, in my mind, sway him to a point where he would look to opt out. But, I mean, there is a tricky dynamic in play there with the fact that, if he does wind up pitching exceptionally well down the stretch and you are not a playoff team, he still could opt out, if he really wanted to down the line, rather than having to basically try to do it, one more time and get paid another year older, down the line. So, we'll see what ultimately happens there. And as I've said a few times already on the show tonight, I think the next week is going to determine it. I mean, if the Giants, and I'm not saying Snell specifically, but determining the path that the Giants go down, whether it winds up being sell, hard sell, soft sell, trade here but add there, the old buy and sell, low level on the margins, the kinds of trades that Farhan's proved to be pretty good at. Maybe try to trim some money somewhere in an attempt to buy a little bit of a better prospect, whatever it amounts to. I think the decision, he's unafraid to do it. I will say that. Whether you agree or disagree with how much of the fault is his at this point, and all of those different things, he's unafraid. And whether you think he should be confident enough in his own status to say, hey, we're going to rebuild this thing, or tear it down a little bit for the last couple of months of the season, because he's confident and knows that maybe in his back pocket he's going to be here next year almost no matter what. Whether we can debate whether it's fair for him to think that way, but the one thing that I know is true is he is unafraid to tear it down a little bit if this team doesn't perform significantly better. And I'll be honest, he may not do it even if they do play a little bit better. Because let's also say it this way, and here's the other, I think, reality for the Giants. The yo-yo that they've been on all year tells you that they probably are not necessarily in the next 7 going to go 6-1, but would it surprise you if they went 5-2? Got 1 against the Dodgers and then swept the Rockies, or got 2 against the Dodgers and then won 3 out of the 4 against the Rockies over the weekend at Oracle Park, and then all of a sudden, where are they? They're right there at 2 under. Just good enough to claim to be in a race. Just good, but also just bad enough to continue to show everybody that they probably can't win that race. It's the old Don Nelson used to say this, head coach of the Warriors. Some guys are just good enough to get you beat. And the Giants all year long feel like they've been just good enough to get beat in the end. Dave in Concord next on the Sports Leader, 808 KNBR. Hey, Dave.
Hey, I was just noticing, I mean, the Giants, their hitters, they've been seeing like they average 10 strikeouts a game. It's not even this year. It's even last year. I mean, they don't choke up. I just don't see them trying to, put the ball in play. At least, when Roger Craig was here, the guys would, at least bunt for, they do something to move the runners over, try to get them in scoring position, or even like a suicide squeeze. I know we don't have the greatest athletes out there in terms of speed, but it's demoralizing to see 3-4 strikeouts from Yaz, and even Chapman. Chapman's hitting like 220, 230, and he was supposed to be like a leader on the team, and it's just it's a malaise that's like swept over the team.
And no, it has been. They've had the 2 hot stretches really this year. The New York Pittsburgh stretch in May when they got to 6 under, and the stretch in right after they got back from Rickwood and St. Louis, and they beat the Cubs, 3 out of 4. They beat the Dodgers 2 out of 3. They beat Atlanta 2 out of 3. And then they won that first game in Cleveland when the Guardians have been playing as well as anybody. But then since then, that first weekend of the month, they lose the final 2 to Cleveland. They lose 2 out of 3 to Toronto. They do win the series against Minnesota just to frustrate everybody more. Well, you can win 2 out of 3 against the Twins, but then you're also losing 2 out of 3 to Toronto and Colorado. And it's just been much more of the poor play, other than, aside from about, 4 or 5 weeks this season, it feels like it's been more poor play than like if you look at the time, like you look at 4 or 5 weeks of pretty good play, the rest of the 3.5 now almost 4 months of bad play, and you can almost make the case, wow, they're only 5 under. Like they should, in some ways, you could make the case they should be worse. But then they've had a lot of comebacks and walk-offs and some late-inning magic, which typically teams that are in their situation don't have.
He steps back, and even with errors, they've been leading the league in errors for the last 2 years. So, I mean, I didn't know in terms of fundamentals, they're carrying their batting woes onto the field, trying to do too much or not doing enough. It's like a contagion, but I just hope things get better, get some young players in there, more athletic, and, it's time for, guys like, the 30-year-olds like Yaz and Flores, and, I think we put too much on them, at the beginning of the season, thinking that they would have the, season that they had in 2021.
Yeah, that was, I think, the one thing that has really undermined the whole plan, I think, for this season. It's been, Soler struggling for as long as he did before getting out of it a little bit. Chapman got off to the first week, had some big hits, but then really struggled until the middle of May. He had a good little run there, but it's never really been. You can look at his season overall and say he's helped him and been a positive player in a lot of different ways, but he hasn't really truly been the guy that he was brought in to be. And then some of the guys that, Yaz and Estrada and Flores, like guys who have been productive players the last few years, I think that, they were expecting that they were going to get the level of play and the level of impact from those guys, regardless of what you think of their numbers. They thought they were going to get more out of those guys than they've been able to get, and that's been another reason why you look up now and this team is 5 under and seemingly close to the worst version of themselves, closer to that version than they are to the better version. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the call tonight, man.
Okay, take care.
All right, 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and take another break. Quick timeout here. Do have a line open if you want to join the conversation at 808 KNBR, and we will get to some texts, and I will get into the live stream as well as the Giants lose to the Dodgers 3-2 right here, KNBR, the sports leader.
question, so give us a ring or blow up the text line at 415-808-KNBR. This is Sports Phone KNBR, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Yeah, no, we need to win. Anytime I get the ball, I expect that we should win. So I got to be better and find ways to be better and help us, any way I can by limiting runs. So I got to start doing that, and confident I will.
All right, Blake Snell, after his third straight really good start. You look at Snell and his line tonight. Giants do lose to the Dodgers. 3-2 is the final. It is Sports Phone KNBR here on a Monday night. 808 KNBR is the number. More calls coming up here in just a second. But Snell, 2 earned with 4 strikeouts, a couple of walks, 4 hits, 6 innings, and it's 3 straight quality starts there for Blake Snell. Now, the bottom of the 6th, 2 out, nobody on. The walk ended up hurting Blake Snell with the game tied. And Freddie Freeman walks, the wild pitch to second. Teoscar Hernandez singles him in, and the Dodgers take the lead there. It was the Teoscar Hernandez show as he drove in all 3 runs tonight for the Dodgers as they get the win. But, Blake Snell pitching like Blake Snell. It took until July, but he is starting to figure it out and put it together. And I think that is all the more reason why where the Giants are at is more frustrating and disappointing. Like, we keep hearing about how, if Snell does this or that, they can get on this run. But the fact that they're not in a better position to begin with, even just with the way things have gone here, as we were talking about earlier, the 6 games before the break and the games here coming out of the break, it's just not adding up for this club. But Snell, a bright spot tonight. Tyler Fitzgerald, a bright spot tonight. Lamont Wade Jr., a bright spot tonight, 2 for 3 with a run scored. Getting on base, walked in addition to the 2 hits. So he was on base 3 times in 4 plate appearances. And, he's done it basically at the top of the Giants lineup all year at this point. So, but not enough. Frustrating loss. Giants have got to be feeling, I think, a little bit like they beat themselves tonight with the gift bases and really the miscommunication from Matos and Ramos that turned into that double in the bottom of the 8th. Just putting Eric Miller and eventually Randy Rodriguez in a spot that they shouldn't have had to have been in. And who knows what happens if that ball gets caught. It's a tie game going to the 9th inning, and you never know. You get through the 9th inning, and it's extra innings, and you throw the extra runner on second, and strange things can happen. And I know the Dodgers have been walking off on the Red Sox over the weekend a couple of times, and the Dodgers are one of the great teams in baseball, but a little bit, they're not the team that I think they think they can be in terms of the pitching. With some of the injuries that they've had. And look, coming out of the gate, they've been a little, I think, disappointing, which is crazy for a team that's 60-41, but they're now 4-0 since the break. So I think they're trying to prove that they've got a run in them to play the kind of baseball and get as healthy as they can down the stretch to where they can maybe contend to win that World Series, which has been elusive if you don't count the one that they got in that 60-game season, which I know Giants fans don't count that. So that's why we're going to roll with it. 808 KNBR, back to the phones we go. And Mike in Livermore next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, what's going on tonight, man?
Long-time listener. Yeah, man. So, I've been listening all night. And, one thing that really just kind of what I've noticed and what, correct me if I'm wrong if nobody has mentioned it, I feel like the Giants don't have, the passion and the unity as a team when they come out to play. I watch sports because I'm passionate about it. And when our Giants come out there, I just don't feel it. And, I know we have some of the highest error ratings in the league and whatnot, but I just also feel like, if they just kind of approached more as a team, and you can kind of see it in their demeanor more, that they're just more passionate about the game, I think we could even be a team that's above 500. I think that just has a lot to do with success in a team playing together and being successful.
I'm with you on the chemistry. I just don't feel like they're not bringing it, if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel – I just think, unfortunately, they're not good enough. Now, the chemistry thing, though, is real, and I think that goes back to the discussion about just how the team was put together. And I think there's something to be said for signing a guy in January or December and signing a guy or multiple players, as the Giants did, in the middle of spring training, and having it truly feel like, okay, everybody's here. It's, Valentine's Day or President's Day or whatever, and it's spring training and it's day one, and this is the team. And you look around and nope, there's Soler and there's Chapman and there's Snell and there's Jung-Hoo Lee, and it's like, all right, you look around and you see the new faces and the young players and the older players, and it has an opportunity through the 6 weeks of spring training to gel into something going into the season. And the Giants, it didn't have that. They had the team they were comfortable going in with. I still think if they don't make some of the moves that they made in spring training, this thing would be worse. I think they already would be, borderline mathematically, on the fringe of being out of the race. They're not at that. In fact, again, they're a 4-game sweep against the Rockies. For as down as everybody is tonight, myself included, they're a 4-game sweep against the Rockies, assuming they don't lose the next 3 to the Dodgers, from basically being right where they've been for the better part of the last 2 months, which is about 2 under 500 and about 3 games out of the final wild card spot, with a bunch of teams in between them. And then we all talk ourselves into the fact that it's, one of the great playoff races of all time, even though it's a mediocre team in a group of a bunch of other mediocre teams that can't get their act together for long enough to prove otherwise. But no, I think the chemistry thing is a real strong point. I'll tell you another thing that hurts chemistry, and I wasn't going to get on this rant tonight, but it's when you send a guy like Hayden Birdsong down after he strikes out 12 in Colorado, of all places, earns a win in a game the Giants really needed because they had dropped the first 2 games against the freaking Rockies, for crying out loud. And he goes out there and throws 6 innings and strikes out 12, and it's just got dominant stuff, 98 pitches. And again, I know it's procedural. I know he wasn't going to pitch until probably Saturday anyway. But they claim Mike Baumann and want to get him on the roster and get him into the bullpen to have an extra arm. And they know they've got the loophole of, well, Hayden Birdsong's not going to pitch, anyway until. So you might as well use that to claim a guy. But I just don't think it's good for your clubhouse when you do that. When a guy that, even if it's just for a couple of days, even if it's procedural, look, I understand why they did it. Like, it's not. I understand that in the grand scheme of things, he's going to make his next start, and then they're going to figure it out. But sending a young guy down, 22 years old, when he performs at that level, I just think it deflates a clubhouse. I think it has the potential to deflate a young pitcher that's been on a pretty nice trajectory since he came up. But it goes to the chemistry point. And the Giants, I'll give them credit, they've done less of that kind of stuff this year. They really have. They did far too much of that the last couple of years. And I think part of hey, we're bringing in Bob Melvin, and we're bringing in Matt Williams, and we're bringing in some of these old school guys. We're not going to do that stuff as much. I think that was the thought process. But that was the kind of move. You have a guy pitch like that, and it's like, yeah, you get to go to San Jose for the in between to get your work in. That's a buzzkill for a young pitcher, and I think for your clubhouse. Because let me tell you, having Hayden Birdsong around the Giants clubhouse the rest of the week and in the dugout, it's a reminder of really the only thing that's gone well since the All-Star break. Like, it's good vibes, man. It's good vibes when you got a young guy that is, looking like he did. And then it's like, yeah, you got to take your in-between in San Jose because we got to get Mike Baumann on the roster, a guy we just claimed off the scrap heap. And again, it's roster efficiency, right? Roster efficiency. You're going to get that 27th spot Saturday, so you might, and Hayden Birdsong's not going to be doing anything in between anyway. Not like he's making a start somewhere else. So he'll get another crack at the Rockies likely on Saturday. But I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much of it. It seems like it's a vibe killer. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick timeout, and we'll come back and we'll tie a bow on this one as the Giants lose to the Dodgers. We'll couple of texts, couple of shout-outs from the YouTube, and then let everybody know what's coming up the rest of the week right here on the Sports Leader.
station. Dial the digits and dive in. 415-808-KNBR. Sports Phone KNBR continues right here and on the all-new KNBR app.
All right, tying a bow on this one. John Dickinson back with you here on The Sports Leader, and we'll be back with you tomorrow following Giants baseball as well. So look for me around 10 o'clock, right after the Giants face the Dodgers. Going to be at training camp tomorrow. Tomorrow's the big opening press conference. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch at the podium, 11 a.m., and then select players. It's report date for training camp, and the first 49er practice is going to be on Wednesday down in Santa Clara. So we'll talk some Niners tomorrow in this slot as well. Of course, Giants off the top, but we will get into some 49er training camp questions as they look to finally try to get over the hump and win that elusive Super Bowl that has eluded them since 1994, in January of 1995. We're talking about Hayden Birdsong being sent out because the Giants wanted to add Mike Baumann to the roster. I said he was a claim. He was actually not a claim. You know me, stickler for accuracy. It was a trade, but it was one of those trades for a guy who had been DFA'd. So the Mariners had DFA'd him. And then worked out a deal with the Giants, who acquired Baumann in exchange for cash. He needed to go on the 26-man roster, and so he comes up, and the Giants stash him in the bullpen for the time being. And, he was with the Orioles and had been DFA'd and ended up with the Mariners, and he got DFA'd last week, and now the Giants able to pick him up and throw him in the pen. So, Hayden Birdsong was the guy who gets sent down. But we'll be back. Nod, nod, wink, wink. He will be back come Saturday when the Giants take on the Rockies in the doubleheader. All right, thanks to Raf Corral. Good working with Raf. Been a while since I've worked with Raf, but excellent stuff. Raf, I'll ask you the question on the air here that I asked you off the air before we came back. Are you excited for Bears training camp? Because I know you're a big Bears guy.
Well, we finally got a quarterback, so it's if we go 9-8, that's an improvement for me. So I can't wait.
Yeah, a big Bears-Niners game this year at Levi's. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm not going to attend to it because every Bear game I've been to, they've lost. So it's I'll watch it on TV.
December 8th, the 49ers and the Bears at Levi's Stadium. The Niners coming off of their trip to Green Bay and then Buffalo. And that's their first home game back in December before it's the lead-up to what will be a short week. They will also play the Rams on Thursday Night Football as well. So, Raf, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Yeah, thanks, JD. It was fun tonight. Unfortunately, the Giants didn't win.
Yeah, we'll see if they can get back off the schneid tomorrow with Jordan Hicks on the mound. Thanks to Raf. Thanks to Cole DePelt. Thanks to Overnight Dave as well for helping out and screening the calls. Excellent work. The Midnight Replay's coming up at the top of the hour. We will talk to you tomorrow right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.